Get to your seats, no more talking.
No more talking.
Hands on lips, bums on seats. Okay, so we had a nice preview of this session in the last session. So we talked about how cinemas, what needs to be done, how they see them going forward. And as was pointed out right at the end, rather brilliantly segueing, was it's not just, cinemas are not solely in charge of their destiny, that there are, that there is an ecosystem out there. And I think we need to see ecosystem in a broad sense here, that we're talking about a film value chain, but we're also talking about relationships with audiences. The things that make cinema as a whole work require a kind of broader sense. And obviously we're talking here about also about how the system that we're immediately dealing with, the distribution system, the way that producers, the way that films are made in order to get to us, and the way that those things are consumed. So there's the kind of streamers element in there as well. So we've got a lot of things to go through, and I think we've got a pretty good panel, I think, to touch on most of these things. So we have Mette Schram from Denmark, and we have Valeska from International Sales Manager from Film Boutique, which is a French-German company, I believe. We have Christian, we all know Christian Brouwer from York Kino, but also you'll know him from CICAE and lots of other things, and Europa Cinemas, of course. We have Mark Cosgrove from Watershed, which is one of our great cinemas and one of the great curated cinemas, actually, which is your job, which you'll probably quite like. So
was my job.
Was your job. Well, you still do a little bit of it. You still stick your nose in.
Talk about that.
You stick your nose in, that's the truth. And we have, to start us off, Algirdas Ramaska from CEO of the Vilnius Film Festival, and right at the start we talked about the role that you and others have taken in building Lithuania, I think, as a place where film matters, and that festival, having been there a few times, is an extraordinary achievement. So, Algirdas, let's start with you, because the ecosystem, who are the stakeholders that we're dealing with? Who are we talking about in your mind when we're talking about the ecosystem, and what is it, where are the tension points?
Hello, everybody. I think that everybody, the stakeholders in this industry is everybody, absolutely. It's the producers, it's like the filmmakers, the distributors, the exhibitors, public partners, sponsors, partners and suppliers, and audience in general, schools, kids, like there's influence, politics, it's everybody there. And I think there is so lack of understanding and being this, and I will mention this word, and I think that everybody what the word that we have to take from here is togetherness, 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 togetherness. So how we can talk with each other, and sorry to say, and we talk about digital, AI and everything, but at this point we have to face it in an old school way. It means like meeting a real person in person, looking into the eyes and talk. And talk, but not just talk, but also listen and hear and learn from each other. And I would say we should use the ABC of like lobbyism, like that. You cannot, this is our like maybe insight thing, that we always want something for ourselves, but we cannot do something without doing something bigger for everybody. So if we can do it bigger for everybody, then we can have a part for ourselves. And this is, if everybody would keep the knowledge, keep everything to themselves, that means that it's a vacuum, and in the vacuum nothing is happening. And I think the key challenge is how to facilitate, how to make this environment and this trust, and so the people can be open and sharing. And I think this conference is an absolute perfect example of being together and sharing and being open and being cozy and safe to say things. This is crucial. But if there would be even more industry players like other filmmakers, etc., that it's even the bigger part of dialogue. And I can tell that just one example, I had to run to the cinema just an hour ago, and I met one producer, and he's doing a film about Ukrainian kids who were kidnapped by Russians, and it's really, really hard topic. It's really sad. It's really, really, really hard topic to tell about. And I said, but did you thought about the audience and how you can attract? Because you will put a lot of efforts, a lot of resources, and you will talk to these kids, and it's very hard for them to talk. But then if there will be just, there will be no audience, why did you do it? And he's never thought about it. I said, because this film, if this will be very depressing and very sad, people might make a decision not to see it because it's just too hard to swallow. It's just too much of everything, and I don't. So you have to think about that. There should be some hope. There should be something inside that, and how you will attract it. And it was like, oh my God, this is a great thing. Thank you for sharing. And I didn't thought about it. And people are often doing things, hard things, and they just forgets about something, and then they're giving the end product to the cinemas and or the distributors, and now you have to bring the audience. But this is not the way it works, and it's not so obvious. A lot of filmmakers, they're artists, and they constantly forget about the other stuff that we need to talk about, and we need to spread this. And the cinemas, it's also, we will get back to data and everything, that this is the knowledge, this is the last front meeting the audience. This is where the connection with the audience happens. So this knowledge should not be stayed in this room, in the cinemas. It has to somehow transform, and to get back the information should get back to the roots where the films are made.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I think the you know, even when you're looking at the wording of the session, we tend to focus on the audience-facing bit of the film family. So there's and it's like sibling rivalry, distributors and exhibitors. You're going to have arguments about things that are because you're right next to each other. But actually, the thing that never gets talked about is films are being made without any sense of how they're going to reach or interact with those audiences.
But why, if instead of rivalry, why can be togetherness? This is what we need to change, I think, that because it's so much against something or so much rivalry, that we can be together and we can learn from each other and care about the audience. And caring about the audience doesn't mean to please the audience in just one way of making a profit, but in many way much richer ways, and making you know, the richer goals, like growing together, having a purpose together, and inspiring communities and making a difference. And with that will come and profit as well.
There's a song there somewhere. I feel like I should have brought the guitar along, and we could have have a little tear in my eye. So Meta, just listening to that point there, you know, we should be together. That's actually something where the bits that unite, the need to get to audiences in this, where the competition is not between, even necessarily just between films. The competition is for audience time in a world of noise. That need to actually work more closely together, is that something you recognize, and is there a practical way of doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very important that the distributors and exhibition work together, and it's even more important now because there are so many films in the market, and some of the smaller distributors don't have that many funds to market, so they really need help from the cinemas. So I think it's very important that you work together.
But it's getting tougher to get. I mean, it seems like if you looked at the overall ecosystem, there's been a point where it's now giant films up here and small films down here. But that middle space that used to be how most of us experience art house film, that seems to be a problem at the moment. And I've got a sense that there's I mean, I'm going to come to Mark about this actually from a cultural point of view, but from an economic point of view, there's an issue. There's clearly an issue about how, about the fact that the really big films are now seem to be increasingly bought up long in advance, and the small films. It's that middle ground that feels like it's empty at the moment.
Yeah, as a small distributor, I think that it has become more difficult to find these little lovely movies that we all want to buy. So a lot of things are pre-bought either by streamers or by more distributors with more money. So we actually started out, first of all, you have presented me as Empire Bio. This is a cinema. So as a colleague of mine from Denmark said yesterday, you should both have cinema and a distribution company, which is what I have. So I'm here as a representative of the Real Pictures with the distribution company.
Do you argue with yourself sometimes?
Yeah, exactly, I do. But the interesting thing is that we actually started the distribution company to assist the cinema in getting more interesting content. And in the beginning, we started out buying things on festivals, and it has now become so expensive that we do not buy things on festivals anymore. We buy them in between festivals, which is left over. There are always something you can pick up, but to compete with the other distributors on the festivals has actually become almost impossible.
Yeah, and the days when everyone had a story about a tiny film that they picked up at Cannes in a room where no one was there, and it went on to be a big hit. Is that now an endangered species?
It is an endangered species. I don't think it exists anymore. Simply because there are so many things that disappear so fast. But you can be lucky. We had Memory, for instance, and some other small films that were actually left over. No one liked it, and it turned out to be quite good for us. We also distributed a lot of domestic Danish films, also smaller ones that no one wanted, and it turned out to be really interesting. Also add-on for our cinema, because if we had the distribution of the film, the gala and the talent, and everyone had to come to our cinema and not to other cinemas, so we can.
Yeah, it's having a cinema. Does that give you, when you've bought a film, is that a huge advantage? And do you have any differences in the way that you play some of your own films, maybe keeping it on longer, or maybe...
I'm much nicer to my own. The films I distribute myself. It's also an interesting thing to see how many movies are actually being distributed that just disappears. That's really sad.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let me come to Valeska, because Valeska, you've been a one-person value chain, because you've been in virtually all of them. You've been a journalist, and you've been in production. You've been so you've got a kind of broader view. Does that notion of now a need for perhaps a different thinking about the way we work together that could unlock some positive opportunities? Is that something you recognise, or where are we at?
Well, I think, honestly, as a sales agent, anyway, we work together with everybody, and we need to listen to the producers, we need to listen to the distributors. The cinemas we are not so much in touch with, but for sure we listen what the distributors say to us, what does work, what does not work, and well, so we have to communicate anyway. Yeah. I think, just coming back to what Mette just said, that she thinks like these little gems do not exist anymore, I totally do not agree. I think these gems still exist. The problem is people cannot make money from that anymore, from the gems, because, well, like, let's say the campaigns for the bigger films are so, well, huge in a way, that all the attention, or I have the impression that most of the attention of the audiences go to these films. So that means like these films stay longer in the cinemas, they have more advertising, they have more reviews and so on, that the smaller films, they just cannot compete anymore. And especially they cannot compete without funding. Yeah, with fundamental funding that needs to be pumped in the films in order to be able to release them, in order to have a good campaign, and so on. Yes.
So are you saying that public funding, which is very focused on production, perhaps ought to be also focused on how some of those films that have been produced actually reach audiences?
Yeah, or like, let's say, I think in Europe it depends very much on the country if there is funding for distributors. I know that in many countries it's not the case, yeah, but in some countries they have support from their national film agencies. And I think, yes, they should be supported more in order to be able to release some smaller films as well.
Yeah, so if we talk about this ecosystem, is it ready for change? What you're saying at the moment seems to be not at the moment, because there are films that would potentially have reached audiences before, and I guess public service broadcasting may have played a big role in that, and you know, maybe there were, you know, DVD was a more manageable and easy thing, that we have reached a stage where there is something which is broken, but what's broken is economic rather than cultural.
Yes, I think so. Totally. That's it.
So what are we going to do about that? No, it is, yeah, sorry.
Maybe we should rethink, and also the funding schemes. Usually when, and we had yesterday the conversation that when the filmmakers are making films and they are applying for funding, there is some kind of, I don't know, official or unofficial rules that you should fit. And I think maybe there is a misunderstanding that we are trying to face a social injustice or some really hard topics, and we are thinking that if we will show this on a big screen, we will change this.
Yeah.
So we are like on a lot of funding of films. It's like you have to have a minorities, you have to, like a social aspect, you have to include this, and that, and then all the films, they are becoming a social dramas, which are a deep topic and hard themes. Is it changing? It can affect an empathy, etc. It's not absolute to one on another, but then it becomes like that we have this overproduction, we have this over social dramas, so maybe we should rethink this kind of a model and think about the audience. And I believe everybody in the audience would agree that we need more positive films.
Yeah.
And when we talk, and if I will say that we need this, a lot of people will accuse me that, you just want to make money, you want some, cheap comedies, etc. No, it's not that way. But why we have to go through all the that way? No, but I think we have to go in the middle.
Yeah.
And now we are not in the middle. And now everybody is desperately looking for audience films, but there's not too many of them. Or if there are few of them, there is, as Valeska said, the prices went extremely high, and everybody's chasing the same rabbit.
I was going to pitch you a cheap comedy.
Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure.
Valeska, just explain what has happened that has made this situation. Is it the big streamers? Is it, what is it that's pushed this market into where it is?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of the streamers and a mix of, I don't know. Maybe that, I have the impression that distributors, or many distributors, are more open to bet on one film that will give them big revenues instead of buying like 3 films and like to divide, let's say, the money I think in former times they would have bought like 3 films pre-pandemic. That's what I say.
Yeah.
3 films instead, and now they give all the money on one film. And it's true what Agita said. Everything becomes more expensive nowadays, not only for the distributors, for us as well. We need to invest a lot more money than we did before.
But it's a systemic problem in as much as the economics is now fixed. It's there. It's something you just have to deal with.
There.
I can't yet see a way out of this, but I am looking at Metka, you know, her staff crying on the massage table, thinking, I can't do this anymore. I've done 12 events this morning. It's that feeling of to put all that effort in, and actually there's a pipeline issue, which means that the kind of films that perhaps could have found their way more to the audience, there's now an issue which I've yet to see a resolution for, other than what you're saying is perhaps that the public money should be less focused on just production and more focused on how that connects to markets.
Yes, I think so.
Well, good luck lobbying with that. Because, I'm sure they'll listen to you. But you know, I think there's Mark.
Interestingly enough, I was just thinking that there was a discussion I had with a producer of a national fund in Berlinale a couple of years back, where they were saying that the films that were being made through national production schemes weren't getting into cinemas. And so maybe what they should be thinking about is investing in the audience rather, you know, for a period, is to invest in the audience rather than in the production side. I don't think it got much traction.
No.
I thought it was an interesting proposition, this idea that, you know, you could reinvest in Metka's tired, you know, workers, and the you know, cinemas would be the place where you develop the audience precisely to see those films that would be produced in the future. As I say, it didn't go anywhere. I mean, it is as we know, the production lobby is a big lobby. So.
Yeah, but I mean, I think this goes back to Al Giddis's discussion right at the beginning of this, is that we've got this linear, one-way value chain where you have development over here and you have the audience all the way over there. Logically, it should be circular. There should be more of this kind of approach. But as long as you have the kind of tax incentives for production and the automatic schemes, then you're going to produce more and more films, and the investment is not going in how those films are connecting with audiences.
And I mean, I was of the view that, you know, you had this value chain that, you know, it was the idea was made into a film, the film then goes into market to get distributed, the film then ends in front of the audience, and that's where the money's made, or the money's recouped, or there's a sort of financial transaction. But working in a cinema, I would say this, is that I view the cinema as actually the starting point. That's the beginning of that sort of value chain, because it's where people are first meeting with ideas and with cinema, with film. And from that, that's the start of the circle coming back round. So rather than seeing it as an economic thing at the end, which it is, but it's also a cultural thing.
That requires the kind of circular approach. You know, I as you know, I was chair of a film fund, and you were incentivized to make more films. If you said, I'd like to make 3 films and put money into marketing and development of those films and getting them out to audiences and to listen back, you were just going to get your funding cut because they wanted you to make 6 films. So it's that kind of oddity that kind of stops Al Giddis's dream, which is a very logical one, and it's your one as well, which is you've made a film, it's gone through the sales, it's gone through distribution, it's got to this. You've learned lots of stuff. We're picking up more and more data about the way that audiences interact with that film. The next film that's being made, though, is starting from scratch with none of that knowledge and none of that data and none of that kind of relationship with the audience. So that starting point, it's more that it should be a circular process.
But also, what's happened in the UK, I think it's particularly interesting, is the BFI's Film Audience Network, which is a kind of more decentralised, initially an exhibition development network, but now the BFI have got talent development network. And they kind of mapped that onto some of the exhibition side. So at Watershed, you know, we're the, bear with me audience, we're the Film Hub lead organisation for the southwest of the UK. based in Watershed in Bristol. So, we're running the cinema at Watershed, but we're also supporting audience development initiatives across the region and indeed with partners nationally. But then you've kind of folded onto that or mapped onto that a talent development network, because what we see in the cinema is when you talk, the problem is this word audience, because the audience are multiple individuals, and in that audience are people that want to make films, and filmmakers don't just come from London in the UK. They come from all over the country. So we have people in and around the venue that want to make film and across the region. So it's a way of identifying that talent. I guess Michael Jenkins, the director of Bait, is the sort of perfect example of somebody that's come out of a kind of regionally developed context, and of course went on to great success at Berlinale, and that film went on to have great success at the box office. And that for me is a really perfect example of that virtuous signal. And if you talk to Mark Jenkins, what he absolutely advocates for is the cinematic experience. I mean, so much so that he's shooting his films on Bolex 16mm.
Yeah.
But you can see the kind of the relationship to the film exhibition and filmmaking ecology.
Yeah, and that is an ecology when you talk in those terms. I think the notion of we heard about this from Spain right at the beginning of this conference, that actually local films they'd found ways to drive the local market by people being really interested in them, and maybe that gets a little bit around Valeska's point about maybe that is a way. Maybe if there is that local interest, that can build. The problem is still, we're trying to get films across borders, and the system for doing that is problematic.
Yeah, I mean, very much so. And I mean, in terms of this, is the film ecosystem ready for change? I mean, I actually, when I said earlier, I don't program the cinema as much these days. Is my ecosystem ready for change? Is the thing. So I mean, I made some changes at Watershed for a couple of reasons. One was, pre-COVID, I kind of knew what was going on in terms of exhibition distribution. Kind of knew we were on a growth trajectory. We were about to build a fourth screen. What was the problem? COVID happened, and everything changed, as we know. And I mean, I think we're still dealing. Well, we're dealing with that kind of post-COVID. The ways in which audiences consume film, the way in which the world has changed significantly. And so I described it as having a compass, and I knew where north, south, west, and east were.
Yeah.
And post-COVID, it was like somebody's taken a magnet and been spinning that around. And I was like, and I think was it David from Lighthouse at the last session said that you used to know that audiences will come to that, they're buying tickets in advance. Now they don't buy tickets in advance. We opened Conclave yesterday, and the advanced sales on it were really poor, to such an extent that I was thinking, this film's not going to work. But now it's doing fantastic business like that, which makes you really nervous. Is it? But, so there's a changed landscape. Plus also as I was hurtling towards 60 and realising that I'd been at Watershed for 30 years as well last year, there was these two significant things. And so I was thinking, do I understand this? And then there was this, we do a curation placement. There was a young person, God damn them, who was under 25 and said to me, they're reissuing Wings of Desire. Cousin were reissuing Wings of Desire. What about screening Wings of Desire? I'd love to see it in the big screen. And I was thinking, Wings of Desire was released just last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I was so familiar with that film that I just felt we'd shown it, and we'd shown it recently. Anyway, I kowtowed to this young person. I don't know if the translators will get kowtowed, but
I'm not sure you're allowed to say kowtowed anymore.
Are you not?
No, I'm afraid.
All right, okay.
That's a 60-year-old.
Well, there you go. There you go. I gave in to this young person, and we screened Wings of Desire, and it was our highest grossing film that weekend. And that was a kind of another instance where I went, I've been here long enough. Young person, program the cinema. And then what I do is I spend my time in the cafe bar.
Good move, yeah.
Talking to the
talking
to the audience about the meaning of life. Which is absolutely brilliant, because the thing about the audience is audiences want to talk about things. Yes, they want to see the films, of course, but the film is merely a springboard to a conversation about what it is to live in the world in 2024. And they raise all sorts of issues. So it's absolutely brilliant. But the thing about the compass and the magnet is not knowing how things are working. So the thing in terms of European films or world cinema is when I thought I knew what was going on, I would go to Cannes, I'd go to Berlin festivals, I'd be watching films and I'd go, that'll work. I saw Rams, and if people remember that Icelandic film, and saw Rams, I thought, oh my God, that's fantastic, that'll play brilliantly. Now we've got When the Light Closes, When the Day Closes, the Icelandic film, and I'm thinking, how the hell are we going to get an audience for that film? And so those films that I would view as our bread and butter, is that a translatable expression?
Yeah, you're allowed to say bread and butter.
I can say bread and butter. So our bread and butter, as it were, that they would, they would just play really comfortably for maybe 2 weeks. They might run on for 3 weeks. They might do. Now those films just aren't. No confidence in them, and so in that space, we're just currently. When I'm not in Watershed Cafe Bar talking to the audience, I'm thinking about how do we make the smaller films work better. I mean, that's something that's really struck me, is how do we make these smaller films work better? And so we're at very early stages where sort of working with a marketing person, Mark de Clairvaux, that people might have heard of, who does Action Marketing Works. And because I've been having interesting conversations with him about using data analytics. And, I mean, it's a dark art, but I'm prepared to sort of go there. But we're talking to, the idea is talking to distributors that have got these smaller films like Julie Keeps Quiet, like the Icelandic film, and talking to exhibitors in the UK that would be screening it and say, can we work together? So both sides, exhibition and distribution, putting money on the table and say, can we, through early awareness activation, things like that, make these films basically work better in the marketplace? So it's very, very early stages. And I mean, I've got the elephant in the room, Michael.
The elephant. Or is that the camel?
Is the elephant in the room is independent. Independent exhibition. The great thing is they're independent. The terrible thing is they're all bloody independent, and they've all got their own. They've all got their own. So trying to corral that sort of. But I think everybody is recognising across exhibition and distribution, we need to make the smaller films work better.
Yeah, and I think that's coming across strongly, though I do have this idea you're not talking to the audience in the bar, there's just you in the bar, on your own, sitting on a table,
I've got my guitar,
talking to yourself.
I've got my guitar, don't worry.
But no, that is a key. I'll bring you in, Christy, because that does feel like such a big point underlying this, is that we're talking so much about how we can make the cinema experience better and we can do all these things, but there's got to be the films to show. There's got to be and it can't just be dominated from the top. But anyway, Christian, tell me what you were going to say.
So many. No, hello. I guess a lot of things are already said. If you think about, of course, distributors are still our key partner within the film industry. I don't doubt it at all. But first of all, this pandemic, it was an acceleration of trends.
Yeah.
So, and I guess a lot of things has to do with digitization of movie theaters. It's way easier to produce movies, but also way easier to release movies. And so it's also a big advantage for us. We have a way more diversity of films, a way more choice of films, but of course it's also a risk. And maybe if you look to America right now, everybody's talking about A24 and Neon, even German distributors. And then if you look what they are doing, then A24 is focused on a specific audience. And they do it quite good, they serve it quite good. If you look on Neon, it's the same. and they don't even release more and more movies now. They say way more often no instead of yes. And I guess to release a movie, it's still not a witchcraft. We know the recipes, but of course it is difficult, and it always was difficult, and it will always be difficult. Why? We are living in a high-risk market. And that, especially if it comes to, it's even with a blockbuster, is high-risk production, but also if it comes to art house. And what you said before, we support producing of movies, even more or higher support if it's independent movies. But then we need a holistic approach. If we just produce a movie and don't invest in marketing, it can't work. And what have we seen since digitization? It's more and more movies coming to the market, but the marketing spend per film is less. It's, of course, you say, oh, my movie, it's way more competition, it won't be set long in theaters, I don't invest more. Of course, it's logical. But then it's also self-fulfilling prophecy that it don't work. But also we have these good examples in Germany and in Europe. So, for example, I'm part of a film distribution award jury in Germany, and if I look back on last year, like Playon, they did a really good job with Anatomy of a Fall, and it was that good. It's not just because this film was a sensation in Cannes. Of course, it's a momentum. Of course, we all need sometimes good luck. But it was hard work to make Sandra Hüller even more prominent, and they worked quite a lot with press, but they worked quite a lot with our theaters. And that's what we also had before. It's about the interaction. And of course, it's about data. In my opinion, nothing works today without technology, but it's only the fundament. At the end of the day, it's often not about innovation. It's about our marketing strategy, it's about working together, and it's about audience development. That's in my opinion. Of course, it's clear I'm in favor of a holistic approach of film funding. That means, of course, we need distribution companies, but we need cinemas. Why? Small distributors can't really invest in audience development. They are way too weak. And they have one film, and maybe the next film is a bit of a different audience. So it's our job, and we are doing it within the European Europa Cinemas network quite strong. But in my opinion, it always was our mission and will be, we need to invest in more audience development. But that's way more complex and expensive today, because before we had one or two local newspapers and one or two public TV broadcasters back in the 80s. Now it's way more complex. The traditional media are important, but of course social media. Letterbox get more and more important. That's also a new player where I'm defending territoriality, it's clear, but especially for festival types, of course, it makes sense to have more like globalized strategies. It mustn't be the same week or weekend within Europe, but close by. We never can create trends as cinemas, as distributors. We are way too small and don't have the power, especially the power of money. But we have to identify trends. And that's what we are doing. It's also what Mark said with a young team. If I look at my team on York, it's all ages, it's all kind of interests. And at the end of the day, bring it together. At the end of the day, if I know you all come to my theater, but then I have to look in my neighborhood, who's there? Data can help. Maybe just analysis can help, who lives in my neighborhood. Oh, here's another audience. But this work is hard work. And audience development is never reach. It's never, oh, I had 1 million impressions. Audience work is hard work, to work with this group, to talk with them, to find what's interesting. What we are doing, we often start with film series quite broad, a bit more in tendency mainstream. And then what's audience development? It's trust building. What did A24? We have trust. Oh, it's a new movie of A24. It must be good. Neon had the last 5 winners of Cannes. Of course, we trust. Playon had more movies, a lot of Cannes winners. You start to trust. And we cinemas, and that's our role, and I'm pretty optimistic about this. We have to get brands. Most of here are brands within their local neighborhood. But we have to invest in audience development and not just see who's already here, but who's next. And I guess if we bring this together, the innovation, but I totally agree, it's in the end of the day, the analog work, what we learned, what we did by experience, and maybe sometimes by feeling and passion, that's the key for the future.
Yeah, you can clap if you like. I mean, Algirdas, you were busily scribbling there. I think you work with A24 sometimes. Did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I want to reflect, and that's true, and that the audience trusts them, and we had an experience to work with them, and from this experience, it's fascinating on how they work and how they approach to the things, and how their brand strategies, how strict they are, how exactly they know what to do and how they are doing, and the materials that we get from them, the data that we get from them, the research things, information, what we get from them, we never get anything like this from other sales agents. But at the same time, they are extremely expensive. They deal with them and they do the sales also extremely good. And one of the distributors told me that, yeah, this is not we bought the films from them. We were sold films. And the problem is that, of course, they are investing in brand and strategy, and they're testing, and they always constantly, and they know what kind of films and how they're gonna do and where is the strength, etc. But they are testing, and they're doing it on a home country, like on the home market, on the US, and they're testing everything. Everything is on the US. So even the expectations were really, really high. But in Europe, the A24 titles so far, they didn't do amazing results.
It's different with York. So last time, if A24 would have been a German distributor, it would have been #3 in York.
Right.
So that's also audience development. So Berlin might be different than others. But I heard what also Mette said, and I guess that's a big risk this year. For example, in Cannes, we had the film I love so much, Emilia Perez. And Mark just told me in UK it's directly gone to Netflix.
Yeah.
Fortunately, not in Germany, but it was a big threat. It will also be released by Netflix, and then two independent distributors collaborated. And I guess, of course, it's about film acquisition. It's about marketing spend and strategy, but partly also about risk taking. And I guess partly, and of course, it's a problem of funding system. You said it about production. Partly, it's about just to produce to survive. And maybe we need to develop these funding schemes for production and distribution also a bit more, with more incentives to get an audience. That's a way smaller audience for an art house title than for multiplex blockbuster, it's clear. But we need, of course, this P&A, because if we don't have this marketing spend, of course it won't work. And that's a big problem, what they discuss in the US right now. Even they say, oh, there's a new study just released last week, and they say there's 40 million in the United States would be interested in independent movies if they would know about. And that's a problem, and where we need, what you said, a shift in the allocation of public money.
Yeah, I'd like to bring Valeska back in. The irony of all of this is when you go through the, you look at everything that's being said at this conference, but you also look at everything that's being said in lots of other film places. There is a really great moment that you could be in where the technology seems to work in our direction. All the things we're talking about the expectations of audiences, there are ways of plugging into that, and the evidence is that if you can get audiences, they really love the cinema still, despite all that hasn't changed in any way. There are great films. Valeska, you said there's still very good indie films being made. It just feels at the moment that I'm just trying to work out where the block is that stops what feels like a really great moment could be. is not happening, because that's the ecosystem bit that's not ready for change. Is something is stopping this, and I really want to just nail what it is that's stopping this moment that could be leading to something really exciting.
I think like us as sales, maybe we are, I mean, we've always been, but maybe nowadays we're even more, we're very much depending on the festival selections, because that is, that's a key moment for us. Because if the film will not have a good festival selection, it is very hard to bring the film or like to make the film live, because nobody would recognize or see the film.
No.
Yeah. And then, of course, as I think it's in all businesses, I mean, there is sometimes it's just a matter of timing. Yeah. We were very lucky with 2 films in a row, one last year, one this year, where just everything matched very well. And because of that, the sales went very well. That was last year, a very difficult film, The Green Border by Agnieszka Holland.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That screened in Venice. And I mean, it was crazy. The film, I think she finished the editing by like in June or something. The festival accepted the film as a late admission. They selected it in competition. At the same time, Polish elections were coming up, so the film was polarizing a lot. She was a strong advocate. The film, we had like amazing reviews and everything, so it was just perfect. It was just a perfect moment also to sell the film. Even though, I mean, you have to see, it's a 2-hour black and white film.
Yeah.
I mean, this is hardcore art house, yeah.
But that it's that whole notion that we've defined something as a hardcore art house that I think it seems to be a problem and a blockage in itself. We define things as being problem films before we've even got out there, and there is also an argument. I think just Mark, you want to come in, but there is an argument about the festival scene too, that actually. Cannes and Venice in particular have become too dominant, and actually the opportunities of finding stuff at those other festivals around it, everyone wants to be at Cannes in particular, and that means that, you know, the streamers are there, the corporate money is there, and that feels like a problem as well in terms of overreach from those festivals.
Totally, that's a big problem. I think that Cannes became very, very strong after the pandemic, with a big dropout of Berlin. Unfortunately, I mean, they were very unlucky because they had 2 editions in a row that were, one was fully canceled, one, the market was canceled, so it was difficult. But it's true, like, I mean, like everybody wants to go to Cannes these days, and it's just impossible. Yeah. And even though, I mean, if the films are in Cannes, I can still say, like, when I started working in sales, like 14 years ago, if a film was selected in Cannes, you were sure you're going to sell it.
Yeah.
It's not the case anymore these days. If you're not, like, in the main competition, but in a side section, you might have problems. Yeah, because if the film is a bit more, let's say, difficult, not easy, very slow, and so on. And the films are very long these days as well. Everything is 2 hours and more, which is a big problem for distributors and exhibitors. Yeah, it's tricky. But at the same time, I can tell you, for example, the one film we had this year, also, I think, a very difficult film that screened here, Afternoons of Solitude by Albert Serra.
Yeah.
When I saw the film, I was like, oh my God, it's impossible to sell. It's a really difficult film. Yeah, the film was in San Sebastian. Okay, it's a Spanish film, but it won there. It won the main award, and that can make a difference for us.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would be extremely difficult, I think. And now, all of a sudden, there are people approaching us, or like after the award, people approaching us where I think like the award mattered. Yeah.
Yeah, so again, Mark, I'm going to bring you in a sec. I just want to ask Meta just the same question about festivals, because it does feel like, you know, we're trying to identify where the ecosystem has problems, and how do festivals work for you now as an small indie?
Yeah, we actually try to attend some of the smaller festivals.
Yeah.
Because things are quieter and you can actually talk to the sales agent because they have fewer customers. So you can meet people on a more personal level. And we also used some of the catch-up screening features after the festivals, and because we have our own cinema, we are actually able to show the movies on a screen, so we don't have to watch them on a computer. So it's a different way of finding the things that we would like to.
And do some of those translate into releases that people can see and get excited by?
Yeah, they do.
I mean, that's good. I mean, that's the theory, is you can go along that route, but it is difficult to, I guess, again, if you've got your own cinema and you're distributing, maybe that's a big advantage.
And also because we're a small distribution company, which does not want to or can afford to acquire large titles, this is a good way of doing it. This is our way of finding the smaller titles without spending a fortune. No,
but we're talking small titles here, that which is perhaps a change. Sorry, Mark, you were.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, the Green Border is a case in point of a film that 10, 15 years ago would have been seen as a kind of key European, important, European title. And I think, now, it's a tough, hardcore European film, and in a way, and there is the absolute reality of that, the economic reality of it as well. But it's I somehow find that it's just not helpful, the definitions. I understand completely why they're happening, but for me, the audience and audiences I want to engage with the themes and issues that are in Green Border. As they do, I believe, with Julie Keeps Quiet, and those kinds of it, and it's how you open that up, and that is the hard work of an exhibitor, of being an exhibition, is that you want to, there's an audience that wants to engage in that, and it's difficult. But I was just thinking, as we're talking about this hardcore, I mean, I don't think the art world would say Francis Bacon's hardcore. Painting, there's a language that we're somehow using in film that doesn't apply in other art forms. It's taken for granted that these, people have exhibitions, these great auteurs, as it were, or great, that they have exhibitions and that they should be there, and for evident reason. Whereas we are getting into this. Oh, it's a bit tough, it's a bit hardcore.
But isn't there part of our audience that actually rather likes the idea that we are, we're the aficionados, we're the cinephiles, we don't really, being accessible. I always remember the very first time, 2004, when I was here, there was just me in a room with one other person in those days. And it was this French guy, he's not with us anymore, unfortunately, but the French exhibitor, who will not be named, came over and said, if I had my way, I wouldn't have to let people into my cinema who don't understand auteur theory, which I thought, as a marketing tool, was kind of interesting. But we do talk about films differently, don't we? We do actually. I mean, we always talk about the director, and when we're trying to build the accessibility, we're already creating it.
But we have to see our audience changed, and if I see our biggest success and most successful weekends in maybe 15 years are all post-pandemic.
Yeah.
We have huge successes post-pandemic. We see an interest, we discussed it also here, in film classics, more than ever, at least more than ever in this century. So they have changed a lot of things, also to the good. The problem is, it's about quality. It was always difficult. I don't believe anyone who says it was easy to release an art house title like from Agnieszka Holler in the 80s, last century. I don't believe. But no, sometimes we talk about crisis, that's not here.
Yeah.
It changed. It's difficult because it's way more audiovisual content we see. And then it's also about this brand. And for example, why works classics? Because these movies are brands. Pulp Fiction is a trend, a brand, and that gives orientation. We are it, and Cannes is a brand. And that's about, and of course it's difficult for smaller movies. It's good, it works good with events, it works often good with film series. Right now we have this Back to 99, 15 films from 1999, all sold out. And the audience is young, because what is a film classic? A movie then older than I am.
Yeah.
So we need to, Sam said, they know it from childhood. We need to see who is the audience out there. And then there are some movies, there is no audience. So it's hard, we might love it, it might get good reviews, but still you can do it as a festival, if you're a brand as a festival and you're high supported. If I would get the same amount per ticket, of course the small movies would work in theaters, but we don't get this public support. And that, what I mean, do we have a distributor, or which distributor do you have in mind, European distributor, who has a focus on Gen Z and millennials? How many do we have? So maybe it's also to focus and to brand building. And of course it's not easy, but then start and to invest in this audience development, and then it can work. And what we see, we still need also this smaller titles. But if anyone says, I'm so convinced, but I have no money, so that's about risk taking. It can't.
Yeah, I think what's interesting and being suggested. I mean, that you said that really well, but the question is whether there are ways that, if you work backwards, that there is demand for things that, rather the blame game of it's the distributor's fault or it's the exhibitor's fault. It feels like there is something around the audience-facing approach that could. Where audience development could work, where if you come more together and there's public funding in there are opportunities perhaps for building different marketing approaches where those smaller films or the films that Valeska says are around, maybe there are opportunities there. But again, it feels like the economics isn't quite right, but we can change the culture perhaps of the way that we market and build those. Algirdas, you were writing things down there.
Oh, I just writing for myself.
A drawing of an elephant.
I couldn't agree more. No, but because it's also about, that's exactly what was mentioned, about the brands, about diversity, and about, at one conference I came to listen about the young audiences, and there was on a stage, there was with all due respect, 60 plus white males, people sitting and talking about the young audiences. And well, it's a waste of time, right? So it's, if, I feel too old already for our business. I'm happy that in our team we have a younger people who can take over and do a very innovative thing. So this is, I think we have to admit, and we have to encourage and empower other people to do. And for example, if we have in the festival, we have a majority, or it's a bigger amount of women that comes to the festival, then we can just check our team, and if there is only women in programming, and the marketing team is only women, and the communication team is only women, so how can we expect that the men will come and find something interesting for them? So we intentionally, like we choose to hire more men to the team just to have a chance to attract more.
When will men get their chance in this industry?
They will. Already had
That's
it
what I will.
Yes.
It's about time we sorted that out. Do we have any questions from the audience? I know this is the non-questioning time at with just a few minutes to go before the end, but. Okay, well, in that case, that's great, because what we're going to do is we're going to go down the line here, because I just want to check that I've got the right approach here, because I'm leaving this conference hall confused in the sense that everything seems to be pointing in our direction.
There is a question.
Oh, there is a question. Oh, out the front here. Is it Victoria again?
Yes.
She is the best audience member there's ever been.
Sorry, I gathered some. I'm very sorry. I'm just gonna.
Don't apologise. Go away.
Just gonna see what you wanna. Step into. So one thing that was interesting for me is about the distribution of money between producers and the whole chain. So I'm just gonna say it quickly. Like the Producers Association in Austria, for example, doesn't support us money-wise when it comes to non-stop kino abo, the Cineville thing. So I thought that's a very stupid situation from their side, because I think they should invest in things like that for films to be seen much more, because also the subscription model is benefiting smaller films a lot. I think Christian Breuer can also say that it's with the York Abo that smaller films are also benefiting from that, because people are they're experimenting more. And then I would like to pose something maybe more provocative, or it was about risk taking. So I'm asking myself, who's taking the risk actually? Maybe we could talk about who's taking the risk, because I as a distributor take risk. I think you as sales already take risks, but I don't know how can we kind of talk more to each other to think about how we can distribute this risk a little bit better, because I don't think that there is one single part that is taking more risks than the others. And also this topic of not giving smaller films the same amount of attention, or that like a bigger film. Of course, from a commercial point of view, I know that the bigger film is going to make more money and so on. But if I don't give the same space to the smaller film in my programming and my marketing, how that small film is going to make any visitors. Sorry, there was a lot of things.
No. It was. I was probably going to ask something quite similar, because the risk-taking element. I mean, let's start with the which I think is the critical one, which is how. If you put more money behind some of those small films, but is it that the economics of those small films isn't the same, Meta, than it was before?
I think that if you work on finding your audience, the chance of making a success is a lot larger. So you have to think about how you find them at a much earlier stage. I think that has been effective for us when we want to buy something. We don't just say we love this movie, we want it, but we also have done the whole marketing campaign and finding the audience in our head before we make an offer on a film.
But it goes back to the theme we've had all the way through, that in order to make that work, you need to put even more effort into doing it, and the returns on that risk, the returns on that investment, look lower. But maybe the point that Victoria's making actually is, on the producers, is still that at some point the one place where there isn't risk being taken is actually in the making of the film in the first place. I mean, you in lots of ways. I mean, you may take creative and artistic risks, but where there's public money involved, you're not necessarily taking some giant risk there. You're putting something out without that sense of how it's actually going to get to market. And I'm just recalling something someone once said to me at Rotterdam on a panel, where they said, a lot of producers are like really bad parents. They abandon their children as soon as they've had them and moved on to the next one. And there is something in that you're saying, that actually what you want is production which is perhaps more in tune with, or in conversation with, or perhaps more of the kind of money is put into how those things are marketed. Is that where there are some answers? Anyone?
I think that one of the things is that a lot of filmmakers, they just became a filmmaker, their job is making films, and they are not so much involved or passionate about how it's gonna be ending. Like they are just making films of making films, and they have another project to go. And this is because they don't. If they have a public money, there is not a higher risk. So they are just going through procedures, developing project, developing this, and then ended up. And if it succeeds, it's a bonus. But in general, this is like a job to do, and it's not absolute, of course. But and this is what we were talking about: differences with the US. This is a totally different aspect because they are sure that what they do is a business.
Yeah.
We are not sure here because it's art, it's culture, it's education, and then there is a business. And if you will say it's a business, even just cinemas, they can say it's a business.
Yeah.
But in other territories, when you speak in this field, you cannot mention business because you will be thrown by stones, you know. And somebody
we never say, we say audiences. No one's ever going to say consumers, are they, in our industry?
And then this is not working when it's like if we would encourage them to adopt these business models that the information about it's a product, which is really bizarre to call it, the product, and then it's consumers, and then it's the development of the product, but information from the consumers and how it's their feedback doesn't come to, and there's no circles there.
There's no loop there. But then, Mark, you want your filmmakers to be taking the risks, don't you? You don't want, what you're looking for here, I think, is more about public money going into, that maybe there should be more being put into the connection between culture and audience, and less filmmakers thinking about what that audience might be, because you kind of want filmmakers to be.
I mean, you want the risky, you want the unknown, you know, you want the provocation, you want all of those things as well as conclave, and that's the sort of balance that you're navigating. But you know, a risk that we took, you know, as I say, I've got Steph, who's doing the programming, and we talk about titles, and you know, they are very keen on. You know, this is somebody that would, at the age of 24, would go up to the BFI South Bank to watch Satan Tango, you know, under their own steam. So they're really interested in, you know, that kind of cinema as well as a kind of range of cinema. And one of the risks that I would say we took recently was showing, for quite a number of shows, the soundtrack to a revolution, soundtrack to a coup d'etat.
Yeah.
And we were getting over 100 admissions on a couple of the screenings, which was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And it's supporting that risk taking, and I think the risk taking can also be fun as well. And I'm thinking about we've screened Wim Wenders' Perfect Days for 11 months now. 10 months, I think, you know, and actually, and that's on a kind of show a weekend after its initial run. And so we've developed a kind of story around that film that's become part of a kind of fun story within the organisation about Zen and the art of toilet cleaning. And, you know, I mean, it regularly gets you know, 60, 70 admissions on that. And I think that there's a way in which we've got to be more, I mean, I guess there's partly playful, but also sort of responsive and experimental around scheduling, programming, and responding.
And that was the way. If you look back at the history of art house films and where they made them, they were. It's amazing how often they were showing. Someone would keep showing it week after week, and it would suddenly come out of nowhere and become the big hit. But it didn't start off as a big hit.
Because there's a pressure now, because there's so much released and so much on. There's a pressure that you just get the turnaround of new releases, and the audience is bewildered. I'm bewildered. The audience is bewildered. So how do you? And I think cinemas can act as a place to say, you know, that films that you might not have got to, like The Outrun or whatever, is still on. But you have to. That's a balance. I mean, that's a risk because it's kind of balancing the financial and cultural.
Yeah.
To reach this Netflix effect when you
well, I mean, I mean, I think the Netflix. We've only got a short time, and I know Valeska's got to go and fly in a moment. So what I'm going to ask you is a very, very short answer. Is the film ecosystem ready for change? I would say the answer to that is no in general sense, but I think what we have done is give a sense that if it was ready for change, great things could happen. So I'd like you all to do is to give me a very brief, just what's the first thing we should be looking at in order to make that film ecosystem work? So Valeska, what is the one thing? No, you're looking at the first priority. The first priority to get this thing back on track and to take advantage of the opportunities we've outlined. And then you can go and get on your aeroplane.
Yeah, but that's a very difficult question.
It's meant to be difficult. That's what you're up here for. If it was easy, we could go and get people off the street. Just your first step. You're in charge now of the whole film industry. And they're coming into your office and they're saying, "Come on, Valeska, what are we going to do? What's the first thing?"
Yeah, I think it's really for me, maybe if I could do, even it has not so much to do with my job itself, but I would give more money in, like, let's say, audience development and also in like film education. Yeah.
There we go. That was great. You see, you got there. Thank you.
Hey.
You may go. It's a good job she got the answer. It could have been missing the plane at that point. So, Christian, you're now in charge because Valeska's now retired.
So if it comes to distribution, it's about focus. If it comes to us, it's about audience development. And if it comes to politics, it's, I guess, one point is what we had a holistic approach. And the second point is regulations. The biggest threat for independent European movies would be a collapse of the territoriality principle.
Yes. So, yeah, exactly. So there is worse that could come, is what you're saying. So our ecosystem's not ready now, but it could actually be worse in the future. Mark, pretend you're at the bar.
I'm at the bar, yeah. Well, I'd be singing. I think so. A more meaningful, nuanced conversation across exhibition and distribution to engage and activate the audience earlier in order to make the smaller films work better.
That's great. I like that one. Thank you, Mark.
It didn't get much response from the audience.
They were inside their heads. They were applauding. You remember, they're tired. They've been doing events. They never met her.
Patience, I thought. Maybe we should sometimes give things a chance to settle. And then I had another thought that we could start calling art house films content instead of works of art, and use the way that the commercial production is using. So be a little more.
Maybe not content, but I know what you mean.
I took that from Cine Europe. They call everything content.
Yeah. Don't listen to that lot, honestly. That's a terrible idea, but thank you. And finally, from home territory, on home turf, I guess.
I would say that more of togetherness, and if people don't want to force them to be in one room, in one bar and to talk, I think the Europa Cinemas program bootcamp is like an amazing example. And in the beginning, we had an amazing discussion and feedback about it. So I think this kind of getting together and speaking actually about the things, about the audience, and being together and not against.
So more Europa Cinemas conferences.
An amazing difference. But also then we need to bring also other part of the, like producers and more distributors and sales, etc. So it should be a bigger room.
An even bigger room, if we can imagine. Is there a bigger room in Lithuania?
No.
Oh. We'll have to go to Latvia.
We're using the
They've got
biggest
loads
one.
of big rooms.
And make sure that tonight, because I'm the local, so I will give you some tips. If you have a time, go in town. It's just yesterday we had a Christmas tree light up, and there's a Christmas market, and mingle around. And Vilnius Street is for parties if you're looking for that. So.
It's always Christmas in Lithuania. Don't go to the Sky Bar. It's really expensive. Go to...
No, Sky Bar is just to go and look around.
Yeah.
It's not to be around. But if you want to find the good places, nice places, just go into the...
That'll please our hosts. Don't use the facilities of the Radisson Blu, whatever you do. Oh, no.
But
Right.
let's be honest,
Yes.
right? The honest and togetherness. Let's be honest, you know?
Honest and together. What the world needs now is love. Sweet love. I think that's the truth. So what we're going to do is, I don't think we need to say more than that. I think I'm done.
Is it turned on?
Yeah.
No, it's the mic.
Oh, the mic. You can't hear the mic. There's a mic there.
Okay.
Yeah, good.
We are going now to the Art House Tales in a few seconds. And then we have the drink, the get-together in half an hour approximately. And just one thing, you can make the checkout tonight if you want. Because tomorrow morning there will be long queues. So get ready for checkout.